my name is Glenn McIntosh, and I was one of the co-animation supervisor on Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and we're here at the View Conference 2018.
How far has technology come, even from when you were working on Jurassic Park 3 to the more recent films?
I would say the renders have exponentially gotten, not only faster but more detailed as far as the environment that we put on the creatures. And by that I mean like the dirt, the grass, how wet their skin looks, how if it's covered in mud or grease or blood, or but just getting more of their environment on them. And I think you saw that especially in the Jurassic fight between the Indominus and the T-Rex at the end of Jurassic World. That just sort of helped embed them in their environment. But even so much as Blue, when she's on the operating table, getting makeup called Fuller's Earth and just padding the underside of the puppet with dirt, because that's what you would see on an ostrich. If you caught an ostrich and tranquilized it, its feet wouldn't be clean, they'd be dirty and covered in muck. And from all the photography I've seen of these animals, that real live animals aren't perfectly clean, they're dirty and messy. And so we wanted to incorporate that into the dinosaurs so that they weren't so clean, but they had a history to them. So there might be scars on them to sort of show that they were in battles, or that they had sort of grown up in this like rough existence, either fighting animals of their own kind or other like larger dinosaurs. And then as far as the performance goes, we actually did motion capture for a lot of the dinosaurs, especially the bipeds, like the raptors, the T-Rex, the Indominus Rex. And that was invaluable as far as quickly blocking out the action, but you also get like a foundation of the performance that you never had before. But there's an improv quality as well, because you're able to do multiple takes very quickly and get all those takes in front of the director, whether it's Colin Trevorrow or Juan Antonio Bayona, and in a way that you would if you were just filming the actor. You're sort of experimenting with the animation in the same way you would experiment with the acting and letting them do improv. And so that opens things up exponentially from a performance point of view, where you're not locked into one specific performance, but you're trying different things. And the entire time you're trying to find like a foundation of the performance by looking at what real animals are doing. There's an economy of movement to what real animal movement. Real animals don't roar before they pounce on something. And so it's, as much as possible, it's looking at BBC documentary footage, footage shot at zoos, and looking at animals of comparable size. So for example, the mid-sized dinosaurs like Triceratops, Stegosaurus, or an Ankylosaurus, we looked at rhinos. Rhinos are around 2 to 3 tons. They have big, thick head ornamentation. And they were a perfect reference for the kind of movements that we needed. For the larger giant sauropods like the Brachiosaurus and the Apatosauruses, we looked at elephants. And the idea there is that an elephant can't technically run, they can only walk fast because they're so enormous. An elephant can't have all 4 feet off the ground at the same time, and we applied that same rule to them. So even though there's a volcano exploding and a pyroclastic flow is racing down the mountain, they're only able to do a really fast run, and it's exactly like what an elephant would have been able to do. And even with that, because of their sheer size, we're able to get a really dynamic or fast walk. Because of their size, they're covering so much ground with each step. So they're still able to walk at like 17 to 20 miles an hour. And then you put like a dynamic camera on that, and then you shake the camera because of the earthquake that the volcano is causing. And you can still make the action really dynamic, even though you think, oh well, it's a walk, but it's not. It's a gigantic animal racing past camera, and within that, you're also building up layers of movement, because you've got the Gallimimus, which is based on an ostrich, racing past the camera like 45 miles an hour, and then you've got the mid-sized dinosaurs, which are bipeds, like the Allosaurus, or even the T-Rex is based on an ostrich, but just slowed down. Like if an ostrich weighed 7 tons, that's what it would move like as well. So we're constantly referencing animals of the natural world and incorporating them into the action.
So how does that play a role when you're creating your own dinosaurs over the last 2 films? Brand new man-made concoctions.
Yeah, sort of our, like the Indominus and the Indoraptor are kind of our Frankenstein dinosaurs, but we're still trying to find a foundation of performance within them. I know that for the Indoraptor, it's supposed to be a little bit off, a little bit tweaked. Like one of those, the older zoos, there would be animals that their cage would be too small and they would just be pacing back and forth, and they're almost insane. There was a photograph that I'd found of a World War I soldier with PTSD, and you feel sorry for him, but you also realize that he isn't quite there, and there's a scariness to the look in his eyes. And I showed that to JA, and JA was like, "Wow, that's really interesting. If we could get that look on the dinosaur, we've got something very interesting." And then on top of that, we're incorporating like little ticks and movements. Like so if you'll notice, like the Indoraptor kind of like shakes, almost like it has like spasms, because it isn't this perfectly created dinosaur. It is like Frankenstein. It's not an animal that is perfectly healthy. It's a little bit off. And then the Indominus Rex, it had raptor DNA in it, and so it was really smart. And we looked at a lot of predators that are very calculating. So it meant looking at birds of prey, looking at ravens, looking at herons when they're hunting, and sort of like finding the timing, because timing helps define character. And so like how long it would take to do something, or how long it would stare at something before attacking. All of those little moments, they sort of add up, where you're building character into the dinosaur's performance to try and make it feel as real as possible and not feel monstrous. That was always something that we tried to shy away from, is that it can, an animal can be very scary without it, sort of becoming into the trap of becoming like a movie monster. So it's staying away from those aspects of it, and if you make it feel like a real animal, it's ultimately going to feel scarier anyway. If it reminds you of a living animal like a saltwater crocodile, or something that is genuinely scary, if we can sort of key in on that, I think it's a more interesting creature that is going to make the audience more scared.
And speaking of more scared, I mean the whole sequence in the house is very scary. But even looking towards the end sequence, where you're bringing the dinosaurs into our world, how has the evolution of CGI and special effects kind of led up to this?
Well, what's been fascinating is just in the past 25 years, we've been able to witness the evolution of modern visual effects, where we've sort of gone from like Ray Harryhausen style of stop motion to the go motion that Phil Tippett and Dennis developed on Dragon Slayer and Empire Strikes Back, to Jurassic Park. And so the work in that is still so impressive. And how do you build on that? How do you embellish on that? And a lot of it is how you frame and film a character, how you assign composition to it, to imply something might happen off screen left if you give more room to it screen right. There's a lot of like cinematic tricks that you're doing to scare the audience, and Colin Trevorrow and Juan Antonio Bayona are masters of that, of being able to knowing what to do to scare an audience. And I think the Jurassic films hold a distinction where they're adventure movies with elements of horror, and it's being able to walk that fine line. I know that Colin, with some of the actions that we had done, almost bordered on gory, and he said, no, they need to be intense and scary, but not gory. That's the distinction, because you also want kids to be able to enjoy these movies. And I remember enjoying Jaws when I was probably too young to see it, but that's why I loved the movie, because it excited my imagination. And I think a lot of it was in what you didn't see. And so we have to be careful not to show too much of the animal, because a lot of that is filled in by the audience's imagination. So in Jurassic World, for example, when the Indominus Rex eats a guy, we didn't want to show too much of it, so Colin suggested we cover it up with palm fronds. So it's the same animation of this horrible event that's going on, but you're almost kind of trying to peek through the palm fronds and Colin's not letting you see it, which I thought was an amazing decision to sort of show off, like you're trying to see what's happening, but it's almost so horrible that we won't let you see it. So, and it's J.A. did that throughout the second half of Fallen Kingdom, where the first half it's almost like two different movies, where the first half is just this absolute race to get off the island, and it's just an exercise in incredible action and direction. And then the second half of the movie becomes almost like the killer in the house that they're trying to get away from, and just slows everything down and makes it much more intense. And you can see how much of that is affected by the performance and the character of the Indoraptor, and how calculating it is, and how much of it's stalking its prey, similar to what I was saying is with the herons and the ravens, and there's an intelligence behind the stalking, which I think makes them scarier as opposed to just a mindless chomping machine.